Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to do the first of 3 Brewdog collaborations that I have for you. So the first one we are going to do is the collaboration with Victory Brewing Company from Pennsylvania in the States, and this is the U-Boat, which is described as being a transatlantic smoked porter, and it's got very good ratings on Rate Beer, which I think it was a 97 or 98, so very nice beer I'm sure. And as I know from my other reviews, Victory and Brewdog produce some pretty awesome beer, so I'm quite excited to finally get around to trying this one for you today. So as is usual then with my beer reviews, I'll take you through a very brief history of both the breweries involved here. It will only be 2 or 3 minutes long, but if you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery websites are in the video description for you below, along with links that will take you to my other reviews both from Brewdog and from Victory, and please do check out my Untappd profile that I've just made and also my Facebook page as well, so go and click on those. But for now, let's get started on the histories. So anyway, Brewdog, as I've told you many a time, are the love child of James Watt and Martin Dickey, and they were founded back in 2007 at a small brewery in the Keswick Industrial Estate in Fraserburgh in the very northeast corner of Scotland. But more recently they've moved their main brewing operations to their new and purpose-built facility in Ellon in Aberdeenshire. But these guys are known for being a very experimental brewery, and particularly at one point for their strong beers as well, but they were largely inspired by the American craft brewing renaissance. They do say that Stone from California was their main influence to produce all these kind of hop forward beers that they do now. But they've got several brew pubs throughout the UK these days, and they began operating, and I think it was late 2010, which was when the Aberdeen one opened up their home bar. They expanded throughout the rest of Scotland the following year, then down into England, and now they have quite a few international sites including Italy, Sweden, I think Norway now as well, Spain. They also have Japan and Brazil as well, so do keep an eye out for a Brewdog bar opening near you in the next little while. But what's quite cool about these guys is that they have their Equity for Punk scheme, which is basically where their customers like you and I can buy into the brewery and have shares, and this helps them fund all their infrastructure. So things such as their new brewery over in Ohio in America, their new brew pubs, and all of this sort of thing, a lot of it is crowd-funded. But today Brewdog are the largest independently owned Scottish craft brewery, and they're expanding pretty rapidly at the moment. This new pub, or this new brewery over in America, should bring a lot more different beers, so we'll see how that goes. But that's your brief history of Brewdog. So on to Victory Brewing. So Victory Brewing are based in Downington in Pennsylvania, which is about 30 miles from Philadelphia, and Victory Brewing was actually founded by 2 friends, Ron Barchett and Bill Kovalevsky, and they'd been childhood friends, and they remained good friends despite going to universities on opposite coasts of the United States. But both decided to quit their jobs in the corporate world and to train as brewers. So Ron studied at the Technical University of Munich, Weinstefan, very famous school, one of the top institutions in the world, and Bill went on to study at the Domens Institute, which is another very well respected German brewing institute. So after gaining some work experience, the pair decided that they should open their own brewery, and they did this in Pennsylvania in 1986. They chose Pennsylvania because that was the state where both of them met originally, but when they opened up their first premises, they converted an old Pepperidge Farm property into their brew pub and brewery, and fairly recently they moved the majority of their brewing production to their new base at Parksburg, which is just a little bit up the road from them. So that's your history of both of the breweries. They're just a very brief one, as I told you at the start. Both breweries have a very good range of beer. Victory, I think, have a range of about 30 or something crazy like that, so go on their website and check out all the different beers that they've done for you. Hopefully I can review some more from them in the future, because the ones I did try were pretty damn awesome, I have to say. And Brewdog have got their main core range of I think it's 6 or 7 beers, and then they've got all these other random ones that they brew as well, so keep an eye on Brewdog for various different things. And Victory, of course, have a very good choice for you, which is available quite regularly. So anyway, let's get on to the tasting of this beer itself. So this one is an 8.4% smoked porter. I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little look at the artwork on this one here. So yeah, as you can see, it's actually quite nicely done. It is, as you can probably guess, with it being called U-Boat, it's a reference to submarine. I'm not sure exactly why they chose the name U-Boat for it, but a transatlantic smoked porter there. On the side it tells you, at the side it says, U-boat patrols the depth of the Atlantic, lost somewhere in the deep inky void between the UK and the US. A sunken nomad with no place to call home, it endlessly charts the cold depths of the sea. This subversive leviathan will sneak past your sonar and torpedo your taste buds with a salvo of smoky flavours and aromas. Rich roasty notes give way to dark fruity flavours against a toasty sweet malt backbone. U-boat is a collaboration between Brewdog and Victory Brewing Company. This smoked porter, brewed to imperial strength using a lager yeast, was matured for almost 2 months before taking to the seas to destroy any lesser porters it finds in its path. And this one was brewed and bottled at the brewery in Ellon in Aberdeenshire, and it just tells you a little bit about Brewdog on the side. But as you can see, it's one of the older Brewdog bottle caps that are on this, and I'm not sure exactly when this one came out. I think it was before I left for Australia, so this beer is perhaps about a year old, so we'll see how we get on with it. But just to tell you the exact specs of it, it comes in at 8.4%. The malt base on this one is extra pale, crystal, carafa, Munich, chocolate and smoked malts, and it's hopped with Mittelfrüh and Galena hops, and it also uses a strain of lager yeast. And this one was brewed by Bill Kovalevsky from Victory, and also Stuart Bowman and France as well from Brewdog. So yeah, it should be a very nice beer for us to try. So without further ado, let's get this guy open and we'll get on with the tasting here. Quite excited to try this one. I've had it for a while. Alright, so as you can see, a nice kind of smoky opening there, just a little bit of carbonation coming out of it. Ooh, that's going to be quite bubbly, as you can see. I'll just pour it quite carefully, because you should get a nice head from it anyway. Yeah. I'll just leave it like that and we can let it settle, and I'll put the rest in just in a minute. So as you can see, it's poured a really nice kind of sort of ebony dark colour, actually, definitely a sort of ebony rosewood colour. There's a 2-finger of a frothy beigey tan head on this one, and that would be bigger of course if I put the rest of it in, but I just want to let it settle a little bit. There's no visible sediment in this one, which I'm surprised about, just mainly because I've had it for a year and it has been in the fridge for about 3 days or something like that, I think now. But it looks a very, very nice beer. As you can see, not transparent at all when I put my fingers behind it, but maybe that's just because of the colour of it. Even if I hold this up to the light, actually, there's not even really a kind of ruby tint to the edges of this. It's definitely black and rosewood. There's not even any visible carbonation on this one, actually. It's maybe, again, just the dark colour, but I can't even see any little bubbles going up towards the bottom of the head, or none sticking towards the side of the glass either. So very, very dark beer, and actually a very good looking one. So let's just chuck the last little bit of this in here and we'll give it a go. So let's have a look at the aroma from this one. Nothing too strong coming off it when you actually pour it. You'll have to pay a bit more attention to this one. You can smell just a little bit of red fruit and a little bit of the kind of caramelly and darker notes without paying too much attention. So let's actually have a look at it properly now. But yeah, as you would expect from a porter, you're getting a nice, sweet, dark, kind of roasted malty aroma here. It's the chocolate actually that's coming out quite prominently on this, and that's mixing a little bit with some red fruity esters, kind of figgy, but there is a little bit of kind of raisin or plum sharpness in there too, but mainly a sort of figgy note I want to say is coming off the fruity esters there, and that, as I say, mixes with the nice chocolate, the sweet chocolate that's in there. If you just let it settle a wee bit, you're getting a sort of almost brown bread character from it as well, a kind of rye-ish bread. And that mixes quite nicely with a little bit of the toasted caramel flavours, I think. It's not a very dark caramel, which is quite interesting on this one. I think it is more of a lighter and sweet caramel that you're getting off this, and then you've got the darker chocolate. If I sugar it up, you can pick up just a little bit of the smoky notes coming off. But it's a sweet smoke. It's almost like a little bit of a meaty smoke, actually, if that makes sense. That kind of sweeter, meaty smoke that you get out of it. I'm not really picking up much in the way of coffee either. It's more of a sweet chocolate with those red fruity esters and a sweeter caramel with a bit of a kind of rye-ish brown bready malt base in there. Maybe a bit cakey is a good way to describe it, actually. But yeah, it smells very, very nice. But it's not one of the most pungent aromas that I've come across from either Brewdog or from Victory. But the most important thing is that it tastes good, and I'm sure it will with the ratings it has. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this guy. This is the U-boat from Brewdog in Aberdeenshire in Scotland, and from Victory in Pennsylvania over in the States. Slàinte. Now that is really quite nice. The thing that's coming into me on this one is that it's actually very sweet when you first take it in, and that smoky character really only comes in on the aftertaste, but that's just a very, very early impression of it. Yeah, that smokiness comes a little bit after the initial flavour blast that you get. It's really quite interesting the way they've approached this one. Yeah, so it's a kind of sweet porter initially, but you are getting a fair blast of the roasted coffee. It's interesting because the roasted coffee is quite prominent, but you don't pick it up so much in the aroma. You're more picking up the kind of sweeter aspects of the beer, which are there in the flavour, the kind of sweet chocolate and a little bit of the caramel as well, and also the kind of reddish fruity esters as well. Yeah. If you just let it sit on your tongue, what you'll feel is this little oily kind of flavour comes out, and you just get these nice red fruity flavours in there. It is quite figgy, but there is a more, it does have that smooth figgy base to it, but there is a little bit of a sharper raisin or plummy flavour comes out, and that's just right behind the very tip of your tongue there. You'll feel this little oily bubble just moving towards the front of your tongue, so it's quite nicely done. But yeah, initially this beer comes in really quite sweet, and in the aftertaste you're getting these smoky aromas, or these smoky flavours. You'll just feel them build in the middle of your tongue there, towards the back sides actually. But the beer comes in, and you do have a little bit of a sort of brown bready blanket on this one. You can taste the lager, the effect of the lager yeast on this one, because it is quite a pale bready malt base that's in this one, so it's quite interesting. The crystal malts and the Munich malts give it just a little bit of bready character, and you just feel the smokiness come in after the initial blast of sweetness. Yeah, I'll stick with that. There is a kind of very light bready character, slightly not quite ryish bread, but more a kind of brown bread flavour that just kind of goes across the middle of your palate there. Not quite cakey. The coffee aroma, the coffee flavours and the smoky elements take it away from being a kind of cakey sweetness, but when you have the liquid on your tongue, you're definitely tasting a sort of sweet caramel in there, and you can pick up the sweeter aspects of the chocolate, and then the more bitter coffee and slightly smoked flavours come out as you move into the aftertaste a bit more. Mittelfrüh as well, there is perhaps just a little hint. German hops you'll find are always very, very smooth around the edge of the palate, and you can pick that up. That's the Mittel hop, the Mittelfrüh hops coming out around the edge of your tongue. You've just got this very little bit of smoothness, but then, as is typical with the noble hops, at the very back corners and the very edge of your tongue, you can pick up just this little earthy character, and that helps build the transition into the smoother hoppy characteristics of this beer. But around the edge of the tongue, it is very smooth and actually quite hard to pick up a flavour in there, because the malt presence is so big in this beer. But as you go through this beer too, even though I'm saying the caramel's a bit sweet, you can pick up a little bit of a kind of treacle or molasses flavour that just builds as your mouth adjusts to the flavour of this beer a bit more. But yeah, it's a really interesting one in how all the flavours come about in this, but the hop characteristic, you get a little bit of earthiness at the back of the palate, but I'm not really getting much around the very edges of the tongue there, which is quite interesting. I would have expected just, maybe it is just intended with that Mittelfrüh hop just to be a very light, kind of almost unnoticeable grassy characteristic around the edge of the hop there, because a porter obviously is a very, very malt forward beer, but this is beautiful. I mean, the flavours here There's a lot going on in this one, so it's quite complex. To me, this really is a tasting beer rather than one you would want to session. When it is an imperial one, you know, it's 8.4%, and you do get a bit of alcohol warmth off it. So I would be more tempted to just have this beer as a taste to see what it's like, if that makes sense. So it's a nice kind of treat beer, if that makes sense. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel, this one, I would say it actually feels fairly light-bodied. It's just a kind of wet mouthfeel. It does feel really quite light-bodied. Usually a porter, I find, can be pushing the mid-bodied characteristic, but it has a bit of alcohol warmth, which makes it feel a little bit heavier after you've taken a few sips of it. But the carbonation on this one, I'm finding, is actually quite active. But you've got a nice kind of balance between sort of sweet malty characteristics on the tongue, and you've also got a good bit of roasted bitter character, which kind of builds up into the aftertaste. But what's interesting to me about this one is that there's not a real... There is a little bit of hoppy dryness around the edge of the tongue, but as I've let the beer kind of mature in my mouth a little bit, it's an earthy characteristic that seems to come around all of the edges of your palate there. The earthy character, as you take more sips of this, spreads all the way around your tongue, and I've never had a beer that quite does that. It's very hard to take the hoppy flavours in this one initially, and then it just kind of comes out. So around the edge of the tongue you've just got a little bit of dryness, which is a kind of earthy hop character, but in the middle of the tongue it comes in very sweet initially, and with a nice kind of sweet, almost wet, oily mouthfeel, and then as you move into the aftertaste you get the more smoky and coffee flavours come out, and it just gives you a little bit of dryness. So overall I'd say this is a really quite interesting and one of the more complex porters that I've actually reviewed for you on the channel here, so it's a really interesting one. So I would say if you do happen to come across this beer, then definitely give it a go, because there's a lot of stuff going on in here, and to see two breweries as good as Victory and Brewdog collaborating, it doesn't happen so often, so do snap it up get the chance. But in terms of the beer itself, very, very nice one, quite complex, and it will test your palate. To me, this is a beer that you get because you know the breweries are good and you want to taste it and see what it's like. It's not a beer that you really want to session. This one is more of a beer that you would just sit and drink for a treat, if that makes sense. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. As always, please let me know your own thoughts on the beer if you do happen to have tried it yourself. I always enjoy reading your comments, and please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Go and like my Facebook page and also have a look at my Untappd profile as well. I thank you again for watching my beer reviews. I will be back soon with more Brewdog ones. I've got 2 more collaboration beers to review for you soon, and hopefully I can return to Victory in the near future as well. But slàinte for now.